Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Umebura SP10, one of the two super majors that happened this weekend. This happened to be the biggest of the two events coming in at a P tier, and with a handful of invaders, it was such a good watch. For our top 16 finishers, you're going to have Osimo, Toroguri, Alice, and Suinoko in 13th. T, Umeki, Yoshidora, and Zamba in 9th. In 7th, you're going to have Yara and Doramiki. 5th is Shutone and Ken. 4th is Kameme. 3rd is Gluttony. 2nd is Mia. And winning the entire thing was a Cola. So let's start this off by talking about how the invaders did, and spoiler, it was not too well, kind of what we expect from Japan. Starting off, you're going to have Apollo Kage in 65th. He ends up losing to Ike in the winner's side, and this Snake Ditto has always been an issue for AK. We saw him going Steve in it, and normally he just goes Steve straight up, but he tried Snake for the first and third game. They didn't go super well. The Steve game was extremely competitive, last stock, last hit, but he just barely couldn't close it out, and this is clearly something that Apollo Kage is going to have to work on. I'm curious to see, does he go just straight up, I'm going to play the Snake Ditto, I'm going to learn this Ditto, or is he going to use Steve for it? And in my opinion, I think he should probably go with Steve. The Snake Ditto is actually a very tricky one. There's just so much going on with all of the grenades. You can have a max of 4 grenades out at one time, whereas when Apollo Kage is on the Steve, he's going to have a lot less chaos, and he's still going to have phenomenal grenade control. It's not like you just forget that when you switch to a different character. So I think the Steve could be very useful for the Ditto, but it's something that he is going to have to put a little bit of time into, and he has a decent losers run, picking up wins on Homika and Uwame before falling to Ocha, a Rosalina player. And Rosalina Snake is a bit of a tricky matchup, not a super common one as well. She just has such amazing control over the grenades with Downbeat, because Downbeat resets the timer on grenades, and you're able to send Luma to kind of do your dirty work so you don't have to contest with those really scary snake boxing tools. So some tricky matchups for Apollo Kage for sure. Nothing that he wouldn't expect, of course. Obviously, he knew Ike was in his path. He beat Homika on the loser side, who's another very good Rosalina player. So it's not just like he got caught off guard. These are some very good opponents that just happened to take him out. Apollo Kage wasn't our only invader to underperform, though. You're also going to have Base Mage finishing in 65th. He's going to lose to Raraccoon in the winner's side. Can't feel too bad about that one. And YN in the loser's side. And Zelda's one of those matchups where you don't really need to know the Zelda matchup. You're probably going to be fine. But then you run into a Zelda player, and then you really need to know the Zelda matchup. And based off how that set went, I don't think Base Mage was super well versed in it. And YN, of all players, is going to tear you apart. He's just so good on that character. You're also going to have Raflo finishing in 33rd. He's going to pick up wins on TKM and Tama P. That Tama P win, I think, is especially important because that's a player who's going to continue getting better and better going into 2024. He's going to end up dropping a set to Kameme in the winner's side. Absolute heartbreaker game 5. Definitely probably should have won that set. It was Sheik versus Politena in game 4. Raflo had a huge lead, but Kameme made a pretty crazy comeback and switched to Sora in game 5 to secure the set. And you're also going to have Raflo dropping to Gachapi in the loser side. Kind of similar to Zelda. You don't really need to know the Lucario matchup until you need to know the Lucario matchup, and then you're really going to need it. And versus Gachapi, of all players, arguably the best Lucario in the world alongside Armadillo, it's definitely going to be a struggle. You're going to have Nader Yu finishing in 65th. He's going to end up losing to Umeki in the winner's side, which was expected. Does have the misfortune of fighting Kananabe as well, right as he gets in the loser's bracket. And to be honest, Kananabe's not a terrible draw for Nader Yu. It ends up going game 5, which does make sense because Pichu Fox is a very difficult matchup for Fox. Honestly, shout out to Kananabe for being able to get over Nader Yu, but this guy is extremely talented. I think 2024 is going to be a pretty good year for him. He's still going to have his inconsistencies here and there because that's just what you get when you're playing Pichu, but I think he could definitely do some pretty crazy things. Editing for Plug, I just forgot to mention this player when I was talking about the invaders that didn't do amazing, but Ouch is going to be finishing in 33rd as well. He's going to pick up a win on Rito, the Link player, and shouts to Rito because he plays Link, and then he's going to end up losing to Ken in the winner's side. You can't feel bad about that one, Ken. One of the best players in the world right now, and Void in the loser's side. And the way that Void was playing this tournament, you also can't feel too bad about that. We also had a couple underperformances from non-invaders. Starting off, you're going to have Hiro. He ends up getting 65th. He is going to pick up a nice win on Rain, but he's going to fall to Matsunabe in the winner's side. And I've said it a lot this video, and I'll probably keep saying it. Can't feel too bad about that one. Falco Bowser is just a really tough matchup for Bowser. And Matsunabe is an incredible player. Ends up going game 5, but Hiro just can't close it out. And in the loser's side, he has the misfortune of playing a Torie. That's another amazing player that was sent to the losers fairly early on this tournament. There was a whole bunch of them. And I feel like, you know, these events are just kind of going to happen. You're playing Bowser. To get 65th at a Super Major with Bowser is still pretty impressive, and I imagine he's going to have a bounce back. All of these players that underperformed are going to have a bounce back, and a player that I can guarantee will have a bounce back is going to be Gact, because he had a pretty rough tournament, ends up getting 129th. He loses really early on to Sin, the Ice Climbers player, so shouts to Sin, Ice Climbers for the win, and he's able to get a couple wins in the loser side, but he has the misfortune of running into Senra again. Losing to Senra for 129th is definitely not a good feeling, and even though I don't think Ness Puff is the worst matchup in the world for Ness, the offstage gameplay is definitely going to be a little bit scary, and I imagine that's where Senra made a majority of his money. And you're also going to have Kananabe finishing in 33rd, not quite as bad as the other ones, but he loses really early on to AA, and then he has a pretty decent losers run, honestly, winning 6 sets in a row, most notably over players like Nate or Yu and Yoshi before running into Snow. And same story here, just an amazing player that he has the misfortune of running into fairly early on in the losers bracket. But what can I say? Umebura had killers in this bracket, even like super early on. But enough of this pessimism. Let's talk about some solid runs that we had, starting off with our invaders. You're going to have Void in 17th place. This is his best run at an open bracket major since quarantine, I believe. So massive props to him for that. He's able to beat Chicken in the winner side. Then he runs into a Cola. Unlucky right there. In the loser side, he's able to beat LY or Lai, Natsu, Ouch, and Shirayuki before falling to Osimo in a Game 5 set. Very winnable on his part. We don't talk about Game 5, but the rest of those games were extremely competitive, and just massive props to Void. I really hope that this is what his 2024 is going to look like, because he's just a sick player to watch. You're also going to have a return to form from Cosmos, who places 17th at this event. He's able to get wins on Tishai, Tsubaki in a really nice reverse 3-0, and Dio. And I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, but Cosmos is very good at the Snake matchup, and I think Aegis has some really good tools in that matchup as well, so it makes sense that he was able to take it 3-0 over Dio. And then he has the misfortune of running into a Cola in the winner's side, unlucky, and Zomba in the loser side, another just kind of unlucky draw. Cosmos has historically actually been pretty good versus Zomba, but since they've kind of last played, Zomba has become a top 10 player in the world. Cosmos does manage to take it to Game 5. We don't really talk about that Game 5 though. And then you're gonna have, speaking of Zomba finishing in 9th place. Technically this is an underperformance from him because he was a top 8 seed, but it's still 9th place at a P tier event. He was able to pick up wins on Mitara in Rob Meta Knight, which is definitely a tough match for Rob. Ends up losing to Toraguri, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but he has a pretty nice losers run, beating Eligo, YN, Cosmos, and Osimo before falling to Doramigi. And when Zomba was at Kaguribi, he ends up getting 9th. He ends up getting 9th at this event. I don't know if he's sticking around for Kowloon, but hopefully he's going to break that 9th place Japanese curse and get into a top 8. And we had a lot of low-tier heroes absolutely farming this event. We'll start off with Lax because he's on Chrom, and I like Chrom a whole lot. He ends up losing to T in the winner's side, and he has a pretty decent losers run, beating Karage, Niatono, and level 1 before falling to Suinoko. To make Chrom work in 2024, you just have to be fundamentally better than your opponent, because the second you go off stage, you are just going to die. So shout out to Lax for being better than all of those players that he beat. You're also going to have Gachapi finishing in 25th. He's going to pick up wins on SSR, Rearlet, and Raflo, only losing to Gluttony and Jagaimo. Jagaimo was a Game 5 set as well, so just massive props to him for that. Lucario, not quite as polarizing as Chrom, but still a very polarizing character. If you don't get your aura, it's going to be very difficult to make this character work. YN is another person who popped off, another 25th, and I mentioned them earlier on here. They were able to get a win over Base Mage. Also were able to get wins over Gausan, the Incineroar player, who got 33rd, and Tora, the very good Samus player, only losing to Abidongo and Zamba. So double robbed with this event. You can't feel too bad about that. Trigger is another player who popped off. He's going to be on the Belmonts, if you don't know, and he's going to pick up wins on Alice and Ryuo, only dropping sets to Zachary and Suinoko, taking games off both of them. But the low tier run of the event has to go to, shocker, Toriguri. This guy is incredible. He was able to get a win over Roki and Zomba in the winner's side. That's right, he beat Zomba with Banjo-Kazooie, didn't even go Game 5, ends up losing to Ken. Literally can't feel bad about that loss, even for a second. Beats Snow to get into the top 16, and then once in the top 16, he has the misfortune of running into Yoshidora. But the consistency that Toriguri has with Banjo-Kazooie, it really is one of the most impressive things I have seen in just like any competitive esport. It is unreal. And I've got two more losers runs I want to talk about before we get into the top 8. Both these guys ended up finishing 13th place, and they're going to be from Suinoko and Alice. Starting off with Suinoko, he was able to pick up a win on Nigatono before falling to Yara, and then he was able to win 5 sets in a row, including wins over Tet, Ike, Trigger, Lax, and Matsunabe before falling to T, though he did manage to take a game. And the conversation for the best Toon Link in the world, or Young Link rather, is a pretty interesting one because there are so many amazing Young Link players. It feels like every 3 months or so, they'll pop off super hard and then just go into hibernation for the next 3 months. So it's a really tough one to decide. But for 2024, Suinoko, best Young Link player in the world, uncontested. And you could say the exact same thing about Alice. Cola got 17th at Let's Make Big Moves, or Luminosity Make Big Moves. Alice ends up getting 13th here. He's the best Roy in the world, uncontested. Won 7 sets in a row in the loser side after losing fairly early on to Trigger. So shouts to Alice for that. He's able to get wins on Moku Moku, Rizio, Takayu, and Tama P Daifuku. As I mentioned earlier on, I think that Tama P win is going to continue increasing in stock. And he's also able to get wins on Goryoka, Ryuo, and Taikei, only using Kazuya versus the Goryoka set. The rest of it was all Roy. So yes, Alice is the best Roy in the world, pretty much uncontested. Moving on to the top 8, and if I left your favorite player out, it wasn't because of spite, it's because this tournament is just absolutely massive. So just leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to tell you how their run was. But our 7th place finishers are going to be Dora, Migi, and Yara. Starting off with Yara, he was able to get that Suinoko win, like I mentioned earlier on, before actually falling to Dora Migi. But then he has a pretty solid losers run where he's able to beat Ocha, Kyo, and Zach Ray to actually get into the top 16. So Zach Ray, 17th place here, losing to Yara in the loser side, and in the winner side, he loses to Kameme. A little bit unlucky there, but that's a side tangent. Yara is able to beat Alice and Umeki to get into the top 8, and once in the top 8, he runs into Shutone, and that's just a very bad draw. Almost wins it, but Shutone pulls off the reverse 3-0 with Olimar, and as we know, Olimar just destroys Samus, so a little bit unlucky there, but still a very good showing from Yara. And Doramigi, as I mentioned, the other 7th place finisher, is able to get wins on DK Bill, Ike, Yara, T, ends up losing to Gluttony in an extremely competitive Game 5 set, beats Zamba 3-0 to get into the top 8, and once in the top 8, he ends up losing to Kameme, and what is another pretty tough matchup for Min Min, in my opinion. I do think that Sora does fairly well there, but Doramigi, really happy to see him starting off the year so strong, because in 2023, we knew this guy was going to be incredible after that Maisuma run. We just kind of didn't know when. It's the exact same thing with Tsubaki at Japan 24. We know he's going to be one of the best in the world. We just kind of have to wait and see. Well, it feels like it's finally been the time, because all of Doramigi's recent results have been phenomenal, and this is just a perfect way to kick off the year. In 5th place, you're going to have Ken and Shutone. Starting off with Shutone, he was able to pick up wins on Abadongo, Riziasu, and Osimo before losing to Akola in the winner's side. You can't feel too bad about that one. It's Akola. Then he's able to get wins on T and Yara before falling to Mia, and you can't feel too bad about that one. It's Mia. He literally lost to the top 2 players in the world. Those are the best losses you could possibly have, and this 2024 start has been amazing for Shutone. He's also got a 3rd place at Delta 7, which was in 2023, but it's going to be part of the 2024 season, and he had a bit of a rocky 2023. It wasn't all bad. He still had a lot of amazing results, still was able to win a couple major events, but we had a lot of inconsistencies that you really didn't see from Shutone in 2022, and going into 2024, it looks like he's trying to get rid of all of those bad placements, because he's just been on an absolute tear. We've only seen 2 events, but they've both been good, so just shouts to Shutone for that. And speaking of a player that's pretty much just been doing good recently, Ken, another really solid place from him. He's able to get wins on Aka, Ouch, Toruguri, and Umeki, falling only to Akola and Kameme. Again, 2 of the best players in the world, and Ken has just been on such a tear. Solo Sonic is just a really good investment, and he's looking like a player that could potentially be top 5 in the world if he keeps this up. In 4th place, you're going to have Kameme. 3rd place, Gluttony. Kameme was able to pick up wins on Raflo and Zachary before falling to Mia in the winner's side. Then he was able to beat Yoshidora, Doramigi, and Ken before falling to Mia once again. And being double eliminated by the same guy always sucks, but at least it was Mia to do it. Like, there are a few better people in the world than Mia, so it's not that big of a deal. And it's always nice to see Kameme at events. He hasn't been going to as much stuff recently, and granted, he had a child, so fair enough, but he's just such a joy to watch. And also, I feel like people really don't give Kameme enough credit for how many characters he has. Like, everyone knows the Sora, but he's got the Mega Man, he's got the Sheik, he's got the Mii Brawler, maybe he still has the Wario. I haven't seen it in a while, but I wouldn't be surprised if he just whipped it out randomly for a game and then went back to Sora, because he does that a lot and it works a lot of the time. So massive props to Kameme. Hope that we get to see more of him, because he's just such a treat to watch. And Gluttony, the only invader who actually just straight up did good, aside from Void and Cosmos, you got to give them their flowers, but Gluttony placed his 3rd seed, which is a very hard seed to place at this event. He was able to get wins on Choco, Gotcha BQ, the Snake player, and massive props to him for getting that one because I thought that could be a little bit of a struggle because Europe just doesn't have a ton of top Snake players, but he was able to overcome it, as well as being able to overcome Matsunabe, Dormigi, and Mia in such a massive upset. To be able to beat Mia in Wario Game 1, she's done it before, but it's just still so impressive. And then he ends up losing to Akola and Mia in the run back, but incredible run from Glutini if he wants to be the best player in the world, and that's what he should be aiming for. He's going to need to be able to take out players like Mia, so the fact that he was able to do it at this tournament shows a lot of very good things for Glutini, and he's going to have a great 2024. And our grand finalists, to literally no one's surprise, are going to be Mia in 2nd and Akola in 1st. Mia was able to pick up wins on Rimu, Jigaimo, Taikei, and Kameme before falling to Glutini. And once in the loser side, he beat Shutone, Kameme, and Glutini in the run back before losing to Akola in a Game 5 set. And he's had an incredible start to 2024. He was able to win Delta 7, even though he did drop a set to Tama P. And I know it was in 2023, but it's for the 2024 ranking season. Now you're going to have this 2nd place at Umebura, and the top 4 players in the world right now: Sonics, Spargo, Mia, and Akola, pretty much uncontested. There are other people that I think can be number 1 in the world, but those are going to be the ones that you're mainly looking at. And I think Mia and Akola have an advantage over Sonics and Spargo just because Japan is going to be the best region. They're going to have more opportunities to compete and get some of these really solid wins. And Mia is a grinder. He goes to a ton of events, and if he keeps playing like this, he's looking to be the best player in the world. But the current best player in the world, he said, not so fast. Akola wins the entire event. No sets dropped. He was able to get wins over Leaf, Void, Snow, Cosmos, Shutone, Ken, Glutini, and Mia. The only person who took him to Game 5 was Mia, and he ended up reverse 3-0ing him. And this is such an important event for Akola because he's been struggling against that top 4 that I mentioned. Mia's beaten them on their last couple encounters. Spargo and Sonics have been beating them on all of their recent encounters. I don't think he has a set on either of those players in 2023. But to get this win over Mia, I feel like it is so important. He's trying to defend his crown. Akola can still be the best player in the world. Steve is obviously going to be very important in that. But I think the key to it is going to be the ages. Maybe not for Mia. Maybe he can still use the Steve versus Mia because he adapted very well in their set. But for Spargo and Sonics, that's a matchup that Steve is heavily struggling in. So we're going to have to see, is the Steve going to be good enough to actually overcome those players, or is he going to have to bring in that secondary Aegis? And I think he's good enough to bring in the secondary Aegis. Maybe not quite yet, but if he keeps working on it, and Akola is a very hard worker, it's going to be something to look out for in 2024. And I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the support. It's been absolutely unreal as of late. If I left out your favorite player, got something wrong, or if you just want to say hi, leave a comment down below. Be sure to sub while you're down there, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!